Hi everyone, this is Rachel Bruns with America's Service Commissions. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. Today we are facilitating a webinar on managing emotions in the workplace and an orientation to the AmeriCorps Member Assistance Program. Many of you are AmeriCorps members serving throughout the country. You have access to this webinar because your AmeriCorps program has purchased this service for all of you to have access to the Member Assistance Program, which is specifically developed for you. America's Service Commissions is the national association of the 52 state service commissions, which administer and fund AmeriCorps state programs throughout the country. So again, you are connected some way to an AmeriCorps program that is participating in the Member Assistance Program for the 2019-2020 program year. And this webinar today is going to provide you with a little bit of information about managing emotions in the workplace, as well as how you can access the Member Assistance Program through our provider, All One Health. Just a quick reminder, kind of housekeeping, orienting you to our webinar today. We are recording today's webinar. That's so that those members that were not able to log in at this particular time can listen back to this information at their own time. You also will be able to do that if you would like. We will send out the recording link to all of the AmeriCorps program director contacts regarding how they can access this recording. You all have your lines currently muted, so you're not able to speak over the audio line, but we strongly encourage you to ask any questions or provide any comments in the chat box throughout, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the call and also have time at the end for Q&A. If you do wish to ask a question over the audio line, there is a raise your hand icon on your GoToTraining control panel. If you press that, that will indicate to me that you'd like your line unmuted, and I will let you know when that's the case so you can ask your question over audio. If you are joining us via telephone, we ask that you enter your unique audio PIN. If you are under the audio section of GoToTraining, you'll see phone call is an option. You'll select that, press the pound key, enter the number provided, and pound again, and that will connect you to our audio system. I will not be able to unmute your line unless you have connected to the audio system. If you're not sure or having a hard time finding what your audio PIN is, let me know and I can provide that to you as well. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenter today, Daphne Balsanor, who is with us from All One Health, who is the provider of our Member Assistance Program service. She'll be talking with you about managing emotions and a little bit about how you can access the benefits available to you through the AmeriCorps Member Assistance Program. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Daphne.
Thank you, Rachel. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us. And as Rachel had mentioned earlier, we will welcome your questions, your comments. So please feel free to raise your hands or write a question in the box, and we'll try to make this as engaging and as practical as it can be for you all. With that, again, my name is Daphne Balsamar. I am the organizational development training specialist for All One Health. Before we get started, I'm going to turn this into our presentation mode, and please let me know if you're able to see the full slide or are you seeing my notes sections. Now it's been on the presentation. Are we seeing my notes or are we seeing this full slide presentation?
Daphne, we can still see the note section. I think you'll have to go to slideshow play in order for us to only see the single slide.
I think what I'll do is switch the screen in which it's playing from.
Okay.
Were you the one who provided me with the the ability to choose which screen I would like to project?
No, our system doesn't do that, so it just shows the main screen that you're on. So however your computer does that doesn't really connect with GoToTraining. So it's just gonna show us what's on your screen.
Thank you guys for being patient. I'm sorry about display here.
If it's easier, Daphne, I can pull up your slides, and if you want, I can advance your slides on my end, if that would be helpful.
Sure, let's try that.
Okay.
It's not getting to the other screen.
Just 1 second here. Okay.
And this. Good. Okay, we will get started with our presentation today. So Rachel, I know some of them have animation. Feel free to just click through those, and then I will actually get started. So again, thank you for being here. Our first topic is going to be on how do we manage emotions in the workplace, and then we're going to touch base on how do we use your member assistance program, either in regards to difficult people or difficult or troubled members or difficult emotions that are arising in the workplace for you, or any other services in which that you have available to you in your program, but also stuff that we are able to provide. So in the workplace, as you may aware, we experience different emotions, either those that are challenging, or whether it is tight time constraints or trying relationships, or just simply feeling overwhelmed or frustrated by the ideas which we've come to work with, or what we expected we would get out of work but do not. And so what we're planning on discussing for today is identifying some common negative emotions and their causes, discuss misconceptions about emotional expressions, and hopefully we can walk out with some tools and strategies on how to best manage our own and those of others who are experiencing difficult emotions that perhaps we are not sure how to manage. While managing everything on our to-do list, whether it is work or whether it is personal lives, oftentimes emotions are flaring up and situations do come up, and we tend to shy away from that. And the reason that we want to talk about these right now, it's if there is these barriers that come up where our emotions will come up and we will suppress it. And oftentimes with suppressed emotions, we're not able to effectively manage the relationships or be as productive as we can, or communicate well enough, because there are so many different barriers that prevents us from effectively communicating how we're feeling, and how do we do that, and how do we know what is okay to experience or to communicate. So my hope is to kind of debunk some of that, and then hopefully you all could have any comments or questions, and I'll be happy to take that. Next, please. And so when it comes to emotions, do we express them or do we not? I like to say, like an elaborated puzzle, our human brain is beautiful and a confusing structure at best. We all experience what I call a emotional conundrum, Sometimes we're not sure whether or not we are to express certain emotions or certain frustration, and we're not sure how our colleagues will respond. And at times, we're not sure whether or not we want our members or our colleagues to express certain emotions to us or in the workplace. And according to new research that was done in Missouri, Columbia, it was stated that many coworkers feel that it is inappropriate to express any type of emotions in the workplace, either both positive or negative. And so what we have learned is that in the workplace, what is being surveyed is that emotions, whether it is managed or not managed, whether it is positive or negative, um, what we're responding to is that it's not, the workplace is not a place for emotions to be discussed or be expressed or be addressed. And what the science is saying behind that is oftentimes with unexpressed emotions, we're not able to communicate well enough with our employees or our members, our colleagues, our supervisors, and that tension often creates productivity issues, and that often creates social concerns, and also creates relationship or different barriers that we experience in the workplace. And in addition to that, when emotions are not expressed, we often recognize that in either physical threats or verbal abuse that creates the same flood of emotions to come out, but yet there's a fear to express that, or there is criticism or underhand offensive violations that are being handed out to others because of inappropriate reactions or inability to control those. However, our bodies, as much as we are able to fight, flight, or freeze, our bodies also releases what this hormone calls oxytocin, which helps us to seek for support. It motivates us to express our thoughts. It motivates us to seek those support and communicate our thoughts. And so, how do we create a workspace where we can communicate some of these frustrations or anger or emotions in ways that are appropriate, in ways that we can get support, in ways that people can understand some of the concerns that we have. And so as we move ahead, we'll talk a little bit about what are the pros and cons of those next. And so what are the dangers to expressing our emotions? Oftentimes, I think the upside to expressing the emotions is that if I'm experiencing anger, it draws attention to unfair or unjust situations. If I'm experiencing anxiety, it may allow me to reassess my capacity, my skills, reassess my situations that may trigger feelings of overwhelming. And if I'm experiencing frustration, it draws attention to disorganization, disregard, or perhaps feelings of undervalued. Next slide, please. And so, what are the most common workplace emotions? And as I've mentioned, they could be anger, anxiety, or frustration. Now, with the downside of either one of these is that there are impact to companies' morale. When anger is flared or anger is unhinged, it can create violence in the workplace or aggressive behavior in the workplace. And that may have an impact in terms of turnover, absenteeism, or when a supervisor is yelling at their direct reports. Though anger draws attention to unfair or unjust or violated policies or issues, we need to come to terms to understand how do we express some of those disappointments or some of these violations in ways that are effective, but yet in ways that are respectful, honest, and professional. Another downside to expressing emotions in the workplace are lower customer satisfaction. Perhaps if we're frustrated, we're not best able to deal with both our internal and external customers in ways that we ought to, especially if we're feeling underappreciated, undervalued, or feeling overwhelmed, or feeling that we've experienced trauma in our workplace, or feeling compassion fatigued. Oftentimes, with these frustrations and these feelings of overwhelmed, we're not able to engage the people that we work for around, those we work around, with a level of customer satisfaction in a way where they could work with us. And two other downsides are decreased team cohesion and performance, and perhaps leadership is not seen as effective. And there's also an increase of disruptive behavior. Issues that are not addressed, behaviors that seems to be normalized, becomes reinforced in the workplace. Next, please. And so, what I would like for you to take a moment and think about is, um, we are contagious. And to put it emphatically, is we are infectious. How are we infecting our workplace? How are we engaging the people that we work for, the people that we work around, and the people that works with us? Are we infecting them with anxiety, attacking with aggressive language, complaining, or are we encouraging or challenging, even giving constructive feedback when necessary, but in the same time or in the same token, caring personally and praising or bringing value to the table. And so, what I want you to think about, either just today and going forward, is how are you infecting the people that you work for? And are you contagious in the sense that people find it to easy people find it easy to work for you, around you, or by you, even if it's not always sunshine when things are difficult, that they can trust you will challenge inappropriate behavior, you can speak frustrations in ways that are effective and address issues, but also be able to communicate praise and communicate positivity and communicate what is working well? Or are you able to seek for support or recognize when others are needing support and to engage in those conversations? And so I want you all to think about that. In what ways are you an additive, making improvements or preserving your workplace, or a detractor in ways where we're finding faults or we're attacking, we're aggressing towards others, or simply complaining without providing solutions. Next, please. And so you can click next as well. And so some of the emotions that I did mention before, the most common negative workplace emotions are frustrations or irritation, anger and aggravation, worry or nervousness. And I think we all can experience those, where if we are anticipating working on a particular project and the details are not fully ironed out, or it is canceled without appropriate communication, or we're giving more tasks than we have been assigned without regard to what is already on the table, or customers are snapping at us, whether it is internal or external customers. So it is normal for us to experience these emotions. And I think we have to make the space as well for our colleagues to also experience some of these emotions, rather than tearing down and say, yeah, this is not the place to have these emotions. And some folks may even experience tears, and we're going to talk about what caused some of that, or how to even engage in these conversations. And sometimes we experience all three if our colleagues, we are realizing that they are not being treated fairly, or they are having difficult experiences, they're not being supported, or even ourselves. Next, please. So in that, frustration is the dominant workplace emotions by 73%. And so what that means is we experience this emotion in our workplace when we feel that other things are beyond our control, or when we're not able to control the situation, or when things have been moved without us, when there is so much uncertainty. And we know for sure about that experience when we have to hold in line for a while, or if we are in a long line and um, it's simply not moving, or in traffic, or simply unproductive meetings, or ineffective management, or organizational structure, or disorganization. We experience some of that. And hopefully, you can relate, or you can think of times in which, in your current role or in your current position, where these frustration has come, and how have you kind of handled some of that, or seen someone express some of that emotion, and how have you able to kind of rein that in, and which we'll talk about how do we do either one. Next slide, please. Now, anger. 60% of colleagues, members have said that they have experienced or seen their boss be angry, and that can come in ways of yelling, aggressive verbal put downs, or demeaning language, or just simply cold remarks. Anger can be self perpetrating, where whenever we feel angry, we start focusing on what makes us angry for the moment. And the more we focus on that particular story, the more we give a reason for why we're angry, which provide ammunition. I remember I did this mediation for a group, and one of my participants said, "Oh my gosh, Daphne, when I'm angry, my friends actually make me more angry because they add fuel to the fire." And other folks have said, actually, I don't need people to. I can add my own fuel to my own fire. And the reason I share this is because the more we think about what it is, and the more we are replaying that script on our mind, it often creates more of the reason. And so when I say that, it doesn't mean that we don't process. It doesn't mean that we don't engage in communication just so that we know why we're angry. It just is an alert to how are we processing our anger? Are we seeking more ammunition or more rationalization? And the more we do that, the angrier we become, and it does not necessarily address the situation in the ways that we want to address that. Anger also leads to failure. Often, in our anger, when we're dealing with our colleagues or customers or those that we are supporting or helping in our current fields, it clouds our judgment, causing us to make mistakes. Anger prevents people from listening and taking advice. And sometimes it feels almost like it messes up with our ego, which lead us to places where we want to protect, we want to rationalize, and we put our defense. And given that we all have this capacity to protect our ego, it also encourages us to think in ways how we engage certain conversation, how do we provide certain feedback in ways where people can receive it, in ways that can lower defense. Another way anger kind of manifests itself is that it leads to arguments and confrontation. Um, it stifles creativity, reduces happiness, and it also saps our energy and how we are to engage with other people. The more anger is not addressed, especially effectively, we hold resentment. And because of that, it may sap our energy or our desire to continue to work with certain folks. Next, please. Now, worry and nervousness, that is nearly 50% of employees experience anxiety in the workplace, according to Kramer. And anxiety is the number one mental health disorder that we experience as well. So, anxiety is an experience that nearly 50% of our employees or our members are currently experiencing. These are primarily caused by irrational, self defeating, or negative thoughts, or this idea of imposter syndrome that someone is going to find out that I am not as good as I am projecting to be, or that I don't actually know what I'm doing, or know what I'm saying. And so there are these fears and nervousness that exist, especially when we don't feel that we are in our element or we have the skills or the support that is needed to actually handle our task. And sometimes we're just overwhelmed by the magnitude of what it is that we ought to do. And the thought of making a difference in our current role can be staggering and it can be so overwhelming that it creates feelings of worry and nervousness. And sometimes some of these worry and nervousness can be personal, where so and so does not like me. What if something bad happened? I can't do it all in one day. I'm sure some of us have had some of those thoughts. What are they going to think of me if they find out this? They're trying to get rid of me. They will make an example of me. And we have some of these thoughts. And though in the moment it may feel that, oh, I have reasons for that, for those thoughts, what I'm hoping we kind of get into or you walk out with, how do we assess some of our thoughts? Can we look for the evidence that we have for these thoughts, or can we challenge these thoughts when they come in, or can we seek support so that we can see do we have validity for our thoughts and address them appropriately. Leaving these thoughts unchecked can create anxiety and can also create our inability to manage our relationships well. Thanks. And so, how do we manage some of these emotions? And sometimes, whether it is anger, frustration, or anxiety, sometimes they come out in the form of tears. And you can click throughout the presentation, Rachel. Thank you. And so, with our emotional experiences, we experience them sometimes in our tears. One response could be we cry when we're angry, or when we're sad, or when we're frustrated, or when we're worried. And tears is a form of response to something that we are experiencing deeper, or there is a different emotion that we are experiencing underneath that. Oftentimes, people feel better after crying. They experience a new understanding of what brought these tears. If they are able to let go of these shame, oftentimes not so much, right? And so, if our response to any of these situations happen to be in the form of of tears, um, we want to examine our emotional triggers. What actually triggered that emotion for me? What triggered those tears? What triggered that shame, or what triggered that feeling of overwhelm? What triggered me feeling angry? And we don't spend enough time thinking about some of that. And so we mask, or we suppress, or we don't address, or we just simply lash out. Perhaps the one tool that we could do is examine some of those emotional triggers, excuse ourselves to take a break, though anger or frustration allows us to reassess situations, or it gives insight to things that are not working right. Perhaps in the heat of the moment, it is not the best time to address a situation. And it is completely okay to excuse ourselves to say, you know what, right now is not the right time for us to talk about this. Can we reschedule? Can we have this discussion at another time? And I remember a situation for me where I worked as a front desk agent, and this customer came, and she was just angry, and rightly so. She had a wedding she wanted to attend to at 4. It was 2 o'clock, and her luggage did not make it to a hotel at the time. And she was angry because partly she was walking in the wedding and needed to be ready, and here it is, it's 2. However, for me, the frustration was her response was, "You guys are incompetent. How can you have lost my bag?" She was angry, yelling all type of racial slurs or epithets, and whatever curse word you can think of, she just slurred all of those out. And for me, I was frustrated. And what I have communicated to her in that moment is like, you know what, I see that you're frustrated, but right now, I'm not able to support you while you are speaking to me that way. I am going to step out, call my supervisor, and then have them best help you. And I think I needed to do that precisely because had I stayed in that situation, I think I would have entered the boxing ring with her and then put on my boxing glove and engage her in the same level in which she was engaging. And I think it is wise when we're able to excuse ourselves because it gives us an opportunity to think, reshift, and verbalize and advocate for what we want in ways that are more effective so that people are able to hear us and so that we're able to establish expectations on how people are to speak to us or treat us differently. Identify the emotions behind the tears or behind the frustration, behind the anger, or behind the worry is also another tool for us because sometimes we're angry not because somebody simply violated a particular expectation, but we're angry about how that may make us look or how that might ruin our reputation or how we may feel that it hurts or it stabbed at our ego. So we have to think through some of these tears or think through some of these emotions so that we're able to get a sense as to what it is that we're angry about, that we're frustrated about, that we're worried about before we're able to best manage that particular emotion or seek the support that we need. Next slide, please. So a couple of strategies for managing frustration. Find some positive in the situation. Remember that there are situations where you've been frustrated in the past and it has worked out. And the reason that I mention these two, when we're frustrated, we're clouded in our judgment that, oh my gosh, things are just going to be ridiculous. I'm not going to find a solution. Perhaps taking a break and allowing ourselves to see the positive or seeing different perspective or seeing that, okay, I don't have all the information. I can't necessarily blame this person based on their personality. Here are the facts that I have. And here are situations that I've had before and that I have conquered. And how can I plan to address this situation differently? It just gives us a different space to operate in rather than just operating from our frustration or from our irritable state, and which oftentimes lead to unproductive discussion. And I think it is also okay for us to communicate that we are frustrated. An example would be I've had discussions with folks who said it's frustrating to me when I'm sending multiple emails and this person is irresponsive. If we were to address that situation in the heat of the moment, we would say to that person, you are irresponsible, you are incompetent, and you're unresponsive, and why don't you just do your job? However, if we've been able to process that, we can say, you know what, when I have to send 5 or 10 emails and you're not responding, this frustrates me because it causes this impact where it feels that I'm not valuable or what I am sending to you, perhaps you're reading that as something that does not meet certain priorities. And I would like for us to take a moment and talk about that and reshift our expectations. Perhaps we're operating in a different field here. And so that just kind of communicate the frustration, it communicates the impact, and then we can establish new expectation for going forward. Next. Now, with anger, oftentimes we see that it's the other person that made me mad. It's the other person that elicit that kind of experience in me. And I think some of the strategies that we can use that is not always them. I think we can agree that we can't control others' behaviors, but we can control how we respond to what happens to us. And when we don't always respond right, how do we fix some of these relationships, or how do we come around and repair some of these relationships, which we'll talk about in future slides. But when it's anger, it's not always them. Our response to our anger is our own and not that of others. So we do have the ability to control how we respond to certain behaviors. And another piece of anger is to understand that it is a secondary emotion to either feelings of hurt, shame, fear, or disappointments. Next slide. And so some of the strategies that we can use to manage in the heat of moments is be aware of our emotional triggers or patterns of trigger. If you know there are certain situations that causes or that elicit some of that emotion, perhaps planning around that or perhaps avoiding some of that, adapting in different ways, or having conversations with people to see in which ways that you can adapt. Breathe and excuse yourself. There are moments where people will try you, situations will try you, and in the heat of the moment is not the right time to intervene or to dialogue some of those concerns. Rescheduling is always a good way to deal with some of these emotions, or even if someone is explosive. If they're explosive, it is also okay to say, hey, it seems like you're very passionate about this particular situation, or you seem disturbed currently. Please excuse yourself, and we can have this discussion at a later time or at a later when you are better or when you feel that you can communicate with me in ways that are respectful, or in ways where we can actually come to a conclusion. When it comes to anger, you want to intervene early. Suppressed anger turns into resentment, and that could also impact morale, and that impacts productivity and efficiency. We are able to choose our response. Perhaps addressing the situation right now is not the right time, and we need time to process. We need to rehearse our responses. We need to figure out what it is that we want to say, what was the concern, what was the issue that angered us, what is the impact, and that kind of answers to the why, and also what the expectations are and how we can communicate that effectively while also listening to the other person so that we can mutually create an agreement that we both can work towards. And then the last one that I do want to speak a little bit about is seek ways to release. Sometimes releasing the anger is a good way to go, either going for a walk, doing karate, boxing, exercising, whatever that will float your boat, because it is an emotion that is there and it needs to be released. And we, if we're walking around in our workplace just screaming at everyone just because we feel like it or just because we're angry, it starts to create a workplace that is toxic. And so remember what I had asked before, how are you infecting those who are working for you? And so while it is okay to feel angry, we do not want to infect people with fear or intimidate them because we're angry and we're not able to rightly or appropriately communicate those frustrations. And so I think the last thing I do want to say in terms of a strategy is that we want to stop, literally stop what you're doing and what you're thinking. Um, think, take a deep breath here and there. Think about what is creating that anger. Set a private meeting. Call for a time where you can authentically express yourself in ways that is effective or in ways that is clear, and managing these situations. And O is for observe, be open um, for be open to understanding your own issues and your own difficulties, but also be open to understand that of others, even if you feel that you are in your rights. Being open to that, giving ourselves that permission to be open softens the environment and also allows people to express their thoughts openly and honestly, while you or yourself can also express your thoughts openly and honestly as well. And then P is for proceed. Proceed with an option. Perhaps it is, hey, we may have had mixed expectations around this. Um, how can we move forward? or here are my expectations, or going forward, I would like for you to stop addressing me in this particular manner because it has had this impact, or perhaps coming up with new policies or new ways of doing things so that we now have an action to move forward. Next, please. And so for strategies when it comes to anxiety, one is not surrounding yourself with folks who are constantly worrying or negative because it rubs off of us, right? And so being able to take space, being able to adjust your environment, the more someone is communicating that, oh my gosh, everything is not working, everything is falling apart, the more you start tagging some of that and the more you start taking some of that. And I'm not saying create a small little bubble for yourself, but really managing that. Oftentimes, I encourage folks, if you're prone to anxiety, watching the news every day is not going to help, right? Because the more you expose yourself to it, creates more or reinforces some of that. So essentially, what I'm saying is, how do we create in ways where we are adapting differently, or we're taking things a step at a time, perhaps, or simply managing the intake. Focus on an action plan, especially in concerns to anxiety. Challenge some of your, there's this hormone called HIPAA, and what it does is it gives you this energy to kind of challenge what is hard. And the reason I say that is for those of us who work out, not me, um, when we work out, it is stressful, especially when building new muscle. And in order for us to do that, we gain energy by pressing forward. And so some of that challenge or that hormone that we have is us tapping into that challenge aspect and asking ourselves, do we have the skills? Do we have the support that is needed? And if we don't, creating an action plan for those so that we're not anxious, or even thinking about what is it that's making me anxious? Do I have evidence for it? Has it happened before? What have I done when it has happened before? And if it has worked, can I do the same thing? And if it has not worked, can I get different perspectives so that I can manage that? Ask for help, and even letting yourself ask, even asking yourself, what is the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is I could lose my job. Okay, what is the worst thing that could happen there? Oh my gosh, I can't pay my bill. And it can just keep going. For some of us, losing our job is just, oh my gosh, that is just the worst. But if we are able to ask for help in seeking for action plan, it might be um, I have different evidence that can show me otherwise, or I have plans that can help support even if I can lose my job or I can do these particular situations may happen. Next slide, please. And so, lastly, is to think about what is the story that you're telling yourself in each of these situations. We can make up stories all the time and then believe them wholeheartedly. So we want to think about what are the stories that we're telling about to ourselves about the reasons we're feeling frustrated, angry, and anxious. What is our judgment? What evidence do we have? Have we tested some of those evidence? What if the story is untrue or holds no water? Um, does it still have its current weight? How would I feel or perceive differently if it is true? And who can I grab around me that can support or that can provide the resources that I feel that I lack? Or even if it was true, what is my responsibility in changing? What is my role and what is within my means, or what are some actions that I can take, or what are within my control? And if we can grasp only what is within our control, then we have more power to make those changes rather than just simply giving in to our emotions and allowing that to like essential. Next slide. And so, just to end, what I do want to give a couple of suggestions is consider the following when experiencing any of these emotions. How do we address issues? By clearing the air rather than clearing the room. Address the situation. Remember, addressing issues do not always have to be in the heat of the moment, but if we can address it and let people know these are the issues or these are the concerns, here are the impacts. And when we're addressing issues, we're not attacking personality, but rather behavior. Be as specific and explicit as you can in identifying behavior or concerns that create some of these emotions for you. Ask to reschedule if it is not the right time. Apologize if you have made the offense or if you have caused some of the issue, even if it's 1.1% of that. Take responsibility so that the communication can continue. Um, but also make points to have different point of action, having different plans, setting expectations, communicate plans going forward so that we're not repeating the same thing. Initiating these dialogues, know your own limits, find common grounds. Oftentimes we're saying the same things in different language. And so pulling back and finding these common grounds and knowing our limits and setting these boundaries. Knowing that we cannot have certain communications with folks while they're yelling, knowing that and really excusing yourself, just like the example that I shared. Knowing that I cannot help someone yelling at me and I'm not inclined to help them. That is my boundary, and that's what I have set for myself, and even communicate to people when you yell at me. I'm less inclined to listen. I'm less inclined to hear. So perhaps right now is not the right time. When we both are able to productively communicate, I'm happy to have this discussion with you. And so that is one way. I love this quote: emotions can get in the way or get you on the way. We can effectively use our emotions in the workplace to communicate concerns, frustration, and issues when we're able to express them effectively, directly, and also clearly while caring for the people that is hearing some of that. And so with that, next please. With that, actually, another slide. With that, that guides us to our member assistance program because sometimes we are able to express some of these emotions to our colleagues, and sometimes they're not the right person to communicate those emotions. And this is where your member assistance program come in. Next slide, please. Some of the services that you have is for mental health. We are available to all members, including their household and family members. You are you will be able to speak with a licensed master's level counselor, and you are able to access us 24/7. We're immediate in the sense that you are able to call, get consultation, get in the moment support for yourself, whether it is you're dealing with family conflicts, couple relationships, substance use, work and life balance, depression, anxiety, grief, parenting, or stress in the workplace. These are free and short-term counseling that is available to you 24/7. And you are able to give us a call per issue. There is not a time limit for those. Um, get these different perspectives in these situations. Next slide. We also have access to life coaching. Life coaching, the difference between life coaching and mental health is that you have access to someone I typically called a professional accountability partner. If you are working towards life coach, I would say life transitioning, um, working on enhancing your communication skills, or even, yes, I'm angry or I'm frustrated, I'm not sure how to effectively communicate that to my colleague, to my boss, or to this particular person. How do I let them know this frustrates me without offending or without yelling? And so that is the purpose of a life coach, to help enhance some of these communication skills, to kind of give tools on how to advocate for yourself in ways that are effective, but also managing stress, managing um, time management issues, creating better work-life balance, and in the ways that life coach does that is to create goals to help assess some of these barriers and think about strategies and action plans to address some of these barriers so that you can achieve your goals and improve your relationships. Next. In addition to mental health and in addition to life coaching, you also do have access to legal and financial. That is a free conversation with a lawyer for 30 minutes that you can discuss any issues, bankruptcy, divorce, estate planning, real estate planning, adoptions, elderly care, and you have access to that lawyer per issue. If you call today and it is about um, elder care, then tomorrow you can call about adoption or real estate or will. That same benefit is also available to financial assistance, where you speak with a financial advisor for 30 minutes for free. Again, with different issues throughout the year. That is not capped either. And then the next service is the personal assistance, where we have a dedicated person who would support you in that. Life gets busy, life gets hectic, life gets messy, and sometimes we're not able to do the things that we want because we are so tied down. You are able to use your member assistance for that as well. If you're booking a travel, you have a recreational sports event you would like to go to, or you would like recommendations, we're able to provide some of those and help coordinate some of those. Cleaning services, home food delivery. It's not just Google, but information where we have vetted, especially if it is childcare services that somebody is looking for. We have vetted certain places and able to provide you with some of these referrals and even help navigate some of those for you as well. Next slide. And to tie all of these in is there is an easy access. As I've mentioned, we're available telephonically 24/7. You're able to access us via the phone, video counseling, chat functionality, mobile app, or web portal. You're able to connect us with us so that we're best able to support you. And our next slide will give you our 1-800 number that you're able to use and contact if we can be of any service. I am going to allow 7 minutes for questions, concerns, or even comments in regards to our managing emotions. If you have any of that, I would be happy to answer those for you. If not, thank you so much for being here, participating, and learning about your member assistance program, and also taking that time to learn some tools and tricks on how to best manage your own and those of those you work with, how to manage their emotions. Thank you.
Thanks, Daphne. Does anyone have any questions about the content that Daphne presented, or questions about the member assistance program, what services available, and how to access the services? Feel free to type those questions or comments in the chat box, or you can also use the raise your hand icon if you'd like your line unmuted. I see we have a hand raised from Jasmine Lucas. So Jasmine, I have unmuted your line if you want to unmute the line on your end and ask your question.
Hello.
Hi, Jasmine, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I just had a question about the member assistance program. As far as I just saw the slide on personal assistant. Is that something we can access just on the website, or is there an app that we can download on our phones for this?
For the personal assistance, you're able to call us and access that. Say you can download the app, the All One Health EAP.com, or All One Health EAP. That's the app. And Rachel, do you know what Will has given you for passcode?
Yep. So the app password for our program is ASC. So for Ask, which is our acronym for our organization. So ASC, and that is listed in the materials that you have from us that hopefully you have gotten from your program staff.
Right.
Okay.
So on the app, you have the chat feature where you can chat with a counselor and say, hey, I'm looking for that. And you're able to speak with someone then through the chat feature, or it also gives you a prompt to call the counselor that you're speaking with. And sometimes they would do that intake throughout the phone number. The app will automatically call the person you're speaking with. Or you don't have to do that. You can just call the 1-800-451-1834. Once you call that, you provide your name, the program you're calling with, and then letting them know I'm looking for personal assistance support or resources, and then we would be able to support with that, whatever that would be.
Okay. And for the life coaching, you said there were up to 3 free sessions. Can you like estimate how much it would be like after the 3 free sessions?
Um, Life coaching is different for us.
Mhm.
We would not, I actually need to find that out if we would connect you with a person who takes your health insurance to see whether or not they can work out a plan that way. But it really depends on the life coach themselves. Now, say that for mental health, you wanted to meet with a counselor as opposed to receiving in the moment support. We can make that referral for you using your health insurance, and then you go and meet that person. Life coaching is going to be different because of what they're accepting in terms of form of payments.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that question.
Any other questions? So again, feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute your line, or feel free to type any questions or comments in the chat box. One question in the chat box from Nicole: what other credentials would we need to supply to access the services besides ASC and the app?
That is it. To get the app, it's download the All One Health EAP, and you're able to get that. Now the mobile, actually the website, which we're shifting our website. For the website, you need a username and a password, which I'm sure Rachel will provide, or you'll have that in the package. But the mobile app, all you need is the password.
And Daphne, just to add to that, so we currently don't have access to the web portal yet, but we will soon. So we'll be rolling that out once it's available to you all. And then, generally speaking, when you call the 1-800 number, so anytime you're talking with someone at All One Health, they're going to ask you what program you're with. So they're going to ask for your
Mhm.
name, and they're going to ask you either the organization or program name. So if you are unsure what that name is, you should check in with your AmeriCorps program director about what organization name or program name they used when they enrolled in this program is what you will use when you call for services.
Mhm. And sometimes we're able to locate programs by state. And so if you're letting us know the state that you're in, or city and state, that often helps as well. I think we have another question on the chat box, no?
I'm not seeing any other questions right now. Here's something on the app. When they ask us what demographic we are, as AmeriCorps members, do we choose student? So I don't know, Daphne, if you have a comment on that. I would just pick whatever you feel most comfortable with, but they don't right
Yeah.
now in the app have like an AmeriCorps member designation. So,
Yeah.
I think whatever you feel most comfortable with. I think in most cases, while you are not employees, you're probably more reflective of kind of a typical employee supervisor relationship
Hmm.
than probably like a student relationship. But I think that's up to you to select what you feel most comfortable with, given that there isn't a service or national service participant or AmeriCorps member designation in the app.
Yeah, I mean, I would tag onto that. Choose whatever you feel comfortable with, but also a suggestion maybe employee. Though we haven't set the language to reflect members, perhaps employee might work as well. just so that you have access to all of the articles that may pertain to you. And if you're a student, you can click on that and you will have articles pertaining to you as well.
Great. Any other questions or comments from folks at this time? And I just want to reiterate as we close out today that you should feel comfortable to call the 1-800 line really with any questions or comments that you have as you're looking for support. So encourage you to utilize that. And if you do have any questions or issues, to let your program know, or feel free to reach out to me at America Service Commissions, and we can help connect you as needed. Well, it looks like we're kind of at the end of the hour now. So I do want to thank Daphne for walking through this information and talking about the benefits for all of you. I encourage you all to utilize this benefit that you have available. And if you do have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, everyone, for being here.